one of the biggest things that even just from Bryan Herta Autosport that I've picked up is being extremely thorough, you know? I say that and then I think about all the free time I have and I'm like, how could anyone be this thorough? Our guys are so good at checking all this stuff and obviously we've got the time and the money in place to do so, but I think that's something I'd like to carry forward is okay, I'm gonna be thorough about this problem. I'm gonna take it to the end. And I've even noticed like if I have to rewire something, if I'm not doing it thoroughly the first time, it comes back to bite me.
Green flag, green flag.
Welcome to the Blind Apex Podcast, where amateur club racers tune in to get faster.
This episode is brought to you by DHWorks Fuel Systems. Use Apex 10 at checkout to save 10% on fueling your passion. Speaking of discounts, use Blind Apex 2025, all one word, to save 20% off a monthly or annual race setup pro plan. And if you want to support the podcast directly, go to buymeacoffee.com/Blind Apex Podcast. Okay, business is done. All right. This episode, I wanted to talk a little bit about car prep. As I wrote my own personal outline, I went into a small circle that I will talk my way out of, I think. But I wanted to bring on somebody who popped up in my Instagram feed, popped up in my YouTube, thanks to IMSA. And yeah, I mean, we've covered the topic a little bit here or there. Everybody knows you need a checklist. Figure out what's on your checklist. Maybe we'll help you with that. But joining me, she lives in the world of old dudes, but she's making moves. She went from STEM classes to an IMSA championship. Here to help us, the lead engineer for Bryan Herta Autosport, the Elantra, and number 98, Megan Ryder. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me on this podcast. I can't wait to hopefully share some insight.
Yes. So I think you guys have a little bit of a head start because Hyundai, they might be the best manufacturer to race with, at least on your level. They seem really engaged.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we get a lot of support from them, and we are lucky enough to be able to help rep them in the United States, and we test and support them as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, I race a Honda. Honda used to be cool. They used
to
be really
Hondas
supportive.
Are coming back.
Well, maybe on your level. On the amateur level, they're like, you peasants, stay down there. Fend for yourselves in the junkyard. But where did this journey for you to become the lead engineer start?
I think it started probably when I was very young. So both my parents used to work in NASCAR for Roush Fenway. So I had the typical, every Sunday I'm watching cars go around and, as younger me, hindsight, I use that as nap time. It was pretty good, but I surrounded myself with it. I got really into building cars. I was always in car clubs, like in high school and a little bit into college. And I ended up pursuing the motorsports bachelor's degree back when it was IUPUI, now Purdue Indy. I graduated with that and I had an internship at Bryan Herta Autosport kind of towards my end of college. And I started as a systems engineering intern there and then moved up into the lead systems role. And then, the next step for me, discussing it with Bryan and some of my coworkers was, hey, we've got this opportunity. We have a car that needs to be ran. We need a race engineer, lead engineer for it. It's kind of there if you want it. And I was like, yeah, for sure. I mean, if I can keep moving up, let's go for it. And honestly, I never kind of imagined myself in that role. I loved systems engineer. I love wiring. I love looking at vitals and doing all this kind of background check, putting my check mark on the car to go out and run on track. And then lead engineering is a totally different challenge. It's race strategy. It's everything else involved with it. And, it's been a great challenge and a great kind of jump for me in that working sector and trying to just keep moving up from there.
Yeah. That's well, okay. So I personally fall asleep to NASCAR too. So I guess I identify with your youth. Like I wake up for the wrecks when I was racing. You'd hear
Yep.
somebody holler on the TV, and I'd be like, "What happened?"
Yep.
But,
Show me the replay.
right. Where's the replay, guys?
Yeah.
I was sorry. I was sleeping.
Right.
When I'm actually at the race, I can't do that. But
Right. Yeah.
it's a little more intriguing. I'm always trying to figure out, my driver's not always in the top 25, so they're not on the leader poll. I'm like, where is he?
Right. Yeah.
So, okay, what attribute do you think helped with your success so early in your career?
It's kind of a tough question. I think for me, I am just so passionate about the challenge. Like motorsports in itself is a whole world full of the challenges and you push as hard as you want and then that's the challenge you get. And so I think that I've just been kind of pushing that envelope and pushing as hard as I can. I'm so passionate about putting out good work into the world that I think when I get presented with something, it's like, yep, check it off. Let's do it. Let's do it really well, and then see what comes next out of it. And I think just that passion and that drive to just keep going has led me to this.
Yeah, I think as you're a professional. You get paid to lead engineer your car, and you worked your way up to that position. Most of us play all the roles you oversee at an amateur level and at an amateur scale. So what I'm hoping is you don't give away too many of your secrets, but I want your help to get us thinking about how we can help ourselves, right? So I hate to say it, but I've probably spent about 2 hours on my car over the last 3 months.
That's fair. I understand that. Look, I've got an SCCA car that it's waiting. That's all it is. So.
Okay. It doesn't help that we got dumped on with snow, right?
Exactly.
And
yeah.
I go out to I emptied my radiator. Okay.
Yep. There you go. Good job.
I did that before it got cold because I knew I wasn't going to do it when it got cold.
Yep.
And I've done some measuring, usually while I sit on a blanket and have a heater pointed at me and stuff like that. But not really engaged right now. But I know I need to be. So
right. Yep.
You're an SCC. You have an SCCA car. What class are you running that in or want to run in?
Well, so I actually just got my permit last year, so I'm working on getting my full license. It's an old TCA car. I'm very lucky. Bryan's actually letting me borrow it and run it. And so he was like, look, do all the maintenance on it and you can run it and we'll use it as a test car for some of our drivers to get more seat time. And, I'm not really familiar with the classes. I'm pretty sure it's unlimited just because it's got a cage and it's an X-race car, but it's stock tune. There's not much to it. It's all pretty much stock suspension besides my roll bars are a little beefier, but there's not really much special about it. It's really for me to just kind of understand, okay, I won't be able to push it like my drivers will, but at least I'll have something to relate to, how different the mentality is on the track. And there's, you can only understand so much by being on the stand and talking to them. So getting in the car and experience that definitely helps.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's a whole different ball game.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I want to follow up with you on that. Then I want to have a conversation about that once you get, some seasons under your belt, because I think that's kind of important.
Yeah, no, my permit didn't go very well, but I got it, but I ended up, I was rolling a car in the sand trap, and for some reason they still gave it to me. So here we are.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a whole nother story in its own.
Yeah, that's special.
It is.
We can get into that story when we go from from you being on the or in the pits to behind the wheel. So
Right.
okay, so I know I have a race in 6 weeks. Okay. I have a checklist of pre-race preparation. What does that type of checklist look like for you?
From the lead engineering side, I'll say it's making sure I have my race planned out, right? All my fuel numbers, what happened last year in that race, if I have any data from there. A lot of, let's see, yeah, fuel numbers for our races, obviously. So 2 hour races, we have pit stops. I know in kind of the sprint racing, it's kind of a different approach to what strategy is. But for me, it's a lot of planning strategy. Who are my competitors? What am I going against? If I'm thinking about physical car prep, I kind of go back to the basics, right? I'm still learning a lot of mechanics and other parts of the cars, but that general checklist of, okay, are my fluids there? Anytime I take a fluid out of the car, I put a big orange piece of tape that says no, this type of fluid that's in the car. So no gearbox oil, no engine oil. That way I don't miss that part because obviously those are super important to have in the car. Right. And then I nut and bolt everything, and I'm lucky enough to be surrounded by some really smart mechanics. So on my own cars, I'm nut and bolting and having them check. On the TCR race cars, they are doing it. They try to keep me away from the mechanics of the car.
Right.
So, and it's a lot of, I meet with my drivers. I have a prep call with them. I let them know the setup on the car, kind of what to expect if we're testing anything, and just the general plan for the weekend. So we have usually 2 practice sessions, qualifying and a race. So what are we doing in those practice sessions? Who's qualifying? Kind of the order of the race and everything that goes along with that. So I feel like I have several checklists that happen.
Right. And I'm gonna jump ahead to something, what test days look like and what practice means for you guys. But you mentioned that you're looking at the data from last year. So for us, I write things down, right? Mm-hmm. So I have my notebook and I'm like, this is my setup for this race. Well, it's a clipboard now, but this is my setup. This is how I think it feels. This is where my shocks are. This is what my spring rates are. This is my alignment, blah, blah. Like I go through all of that. And so this year, I know I start at VIR first, Summit Point second. And so I'm lucky enough with my car that I like mostly the same setup between the 2 tracks. But I want my favorite setup to go on what I preferred for VIR. And then for me personally, the only change I'm making is the sway bar. Go listen to the last podcast or a couple podcasts ago. We talked about sway bars and apparently it's super controversial, but whatever. They'll get over that. But it's what I think we miss is there's questions that we're going to ask ourselves this time of year or before the season starts or before a race that we're like, man, I wish I had the previous event's information. And somehow we don't close that loop. I know at the professional level, you guys have data on top of data with a little data sprinkled on top, right? Like you guys have it. You guys have that covered. In the amateur world, we don't. So I think it's important for people to realize that the pros rely on all this data to sort of guide them in between events.
Yeah, 100% for sure. No, I'm always looking back at same thing. I'm looking at my setup from last year. Okay, where did I end the race and what are those comments at the end of the race? So do I start with how the car stopped at the end of the race? Is that my setup? Or do I know that, hey, we had too much push at the end of a stint, right? We have front wheel drive cars. So, we're trying to delay that understeer as long as possible into our stint. It's inevitable. We're going to have it. But if we can delay it a little bit, then it makes our drivers a lot happier. It makes the radio a lot easier to listen to. um, but if I can, like you said, take those data points and previous year me is like, yeah, I'm taking great notes. Like I have my driver do their report, I do my own report. And then there's even sometimes where I go back like this year and I'm like, oh, wow, I did not write as much as I should have, or we didn't get as many data points as we wanted. And so it's really for me making sure, yep, I'm definitely going to ask myself this question next year. So let me just write down the answer so that because I'm not going to remember it in a year. That's for sure.
So you solicit driver feedback. And for us, it's usually self-reflection, right? But
Yep.
what does your driver feedback form look like?
Yeah, so for us, we break it down by session. So practice 1, what were we feeling? I take into consideration temperature, tire pressures, kind of all the conditions around what they felt. Same thing for practice 2 and qualifying. I get 2 drivers' inputs for practice and the race, but for qualifying, it's just 1 driver. So maybe they feel they have a slightly different setup or something like this because it's just them for 15 minutes running. So I want to give them the best car they can push. And then for the race, it's the same thing, and we kind of break it down. So a race run through, what was the driver feeling? And usually when I say that, I try to break it down with my drivers to say, okay, what was your entry feeling? What was your mid feeling? What was your exit feeling? That breaks the car down. Was it high speed corners, low speed? That helps me decide if it's an aero platform, mechanical platform. What do I need to kind of focus on? And then we go through and we have sections for engine performance, brake performance. We compete with other cars. So were we lacking speed compared to the other cars and why? In our races, we have BOP, so balance of power. A lot of times our performance is, besides what the driver can physically do, car performance can sometimes be out of our hands. In that case with BOP.
Yeah. And all of those things you highlighted, I think, are important for us as amateurs who do our self-reflections or hopefully are doing some sort of self-reflection to write down, right? Where am I having problems? Not just where are you having problems, but what's the good stuff, right?
Yes.
Because it's really easy to be like, especially in front-wheel drive cars. I have a front-wheel drive car. Like, she plows like it's a New York winter. Like we're always plowing. Okay.
Yep.
I got it. But where was it good?
Yes.
What was it doing well? And then what can we do to make adjustments? Because you're right. There's probably something to be had with, well, it's fine in the high speed stuff, but in the slow speed stuff, it's pushing. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, let's figure that out. Let's work on that. Spring change, sway bar, tire pressure, whatever the solution might be to test, right?
Yep.
So you guys have 2 practices, but do you do test days where it's just you and the team at a track, whether it's a closed track or, half a dozen teams get together and rent the track and go out and test? Do you do those type of days also?
Sometimes. So like before our first race in Daytona, we have the roar. I'm not sure how we're familiar with IMSA and how that works, but the roar is basically, it's not required. So any IMSA team can sign up and enter it. And so most of the TCR cars usually go just because they have new drivers, new engineers, whatever it is you're trying to shake cobwebs off. But that is 5 practice sessions of us just being able to test or just get the driver comfortable with being at Daytona for the first time if that's the case. So we have that, and then very occasionally we'll test. We have got a club track up here, Putnam. I don't know if you're familiar with Putnam.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have one of our newer drivers, Maddie. She actually will be testing at her home club track, and so as much as she wants, we will be a part of that. That is more of kind of, it's a driver kind of, if they want to, we can make it happen.
Okay. So I have a question I told a previous guest that was on that we were trying to nail down a date and time. And he was like, you got to ask her when you're doing test days, how often are you swapping tires to try to keep the data consistent?
As many tires as somebody will allow me to run. I will never say no to more tires.
Okay.
So yeah, that was one thing I really had to focus on at the Roar this year was I had 3 drivers in the car for a 4-hour race, and I've never managed 3 drivers before as a lead engineer. And so that brings its whole challenge of, okay, now who's qualifying, who's doing middle stint, who's finishing, and that's usually who gets what tires, right? If you're qualifying, I'm going to give you the most runs on new fronts. If you're
Mhm.
end of stint, sorry, you're going to go in at the end of practice and feel what the car feels like at the end of the stint, because that's what matters the most, right? If you can push the car with old tires, then it doesn't really matter how it feels right at the start. You can kind of hang on for some laps.
So what I'm hearing this underlying tone that I'm okay with leaving my 3-year-old tires on the back of my Honda Civic because they don't really do anything.
Exactly.
This
Yep.
is what
Yeah.
I'm hearing.
Rears will last so long on a front-wheel drive car.
Yeah.
You
Let's
can
just
forget
manage
about
the
them.
front. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I tuned right in. You were like
There
brand
you
new
go.
fronts, and
Yep.
I was like, yeah, leave those
Yeah.
rears on. Who cares about those? Okay.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah, let's brick those. Let's
For
get them
sure.
as
Yeah.
hard and nasty as possible. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, okay. So you talk about getting the driver feedback and you talk about looking at data. Where and how do you meld those two to start making your decisions?
Yeah. So a lot of that comes post-session. I'm looking at driver inputs and video. We also have video. I'm sure a lot of you stick a GoPro in your car for a CCA racing and it's there and you can see if you're hitting your lines. Basically, that's what we use video for, is to look at the driving line and then, okay, say in the data, you can break 10 meters deeper. We usually have a driver to compare it to. So I know sometimes that can be the struggle. Usually it's your best lap. If it's just by yourself, you take your best lap and say, okay, yeah, this lap felt really good in turns 1, 4, and 6, and then 3, 5, and 7 I just have to work on. So sometimes I can break the data up into different laps and say, okay, like you had a really good first turn here. Now we need to apply it and just put a whole entire lap together. And so we're kind of taking driver comments, data, and video, and then I try to pick out 3 things to work on for the next session for my drivers. That way, we're focusing on, okay, where are major time losses? That's the big thing. What are the 3 parts that we're losing time on? Maybe it's just one common theme, right? You're not getting on throttle soon enough, something like that. Kind of that comparative data look. And then, okay, here's 3 things for the next session. And forget about everything else. If you fix those 3 things, we're successful. That's kind of my mentality on when we look at data.
Okay, let's talk about that approach of the 3 things, because we've heard 1 thing, 2 things, 3 things from various guests, and I don't mind 3 things as long as the track is okay with 3 things.
Yeah.
Or it's up one spot, right? Like, let's say I'm miserable in turn 1. I need to brake a little later. I need to release a little earlier, and I need to apply the throttle a little earlier also, right? Like, that's 3 things by itself just in turn 1. Are you saying fix turn 1 and turn 7 and turn 9, or are you working on that? Like, this is throttle application, this is braking. How are you breaking that up?
I think you made a really good point of my weak spots turn 1, for example. And so I think we kind of that combination is pretty fluid, I think I could call that. So if I notice, oh, my driver's struggling super bad in turn 1, okay, just focus on turn 1. Look, I'm going to give you 4 laps to fix turn 1. And if you don't do it, then we need to reevaluate our approach. Is there something that I can communicate better? Is there something that maybe they're not picking up on? Is our communication style different? But it really just kind of depends once you look at a whole lap of data. Okay, if I see my driver struggling with braking on entry in every corner, that'll be their one big thing. And then maybe, okay, once braking comes along, okay, now let's do that aggressive on throttle application, right? You want to get on power as soon as possible in a front wheel drive car. Everything needs to get done. Turn early, brake hard, and then on throttle as soon as you can, right? It sounds so easy to just say it, but once you have someone behind the
Yeah.
wheel, it's a whole different story, of course. But yeah,
Then you
I
add
mean,
other cars, you add
yes.
traffic, you add
Yeah,
the potential of flags. It, but yes, brake
yeah.
hard, turn in, apply throttle. Simple, right?
Yeah,
Racing
it
is
sounds easy.
easy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
when you do it, when you race by numbers like that, right? 1, 2, 3, it's very simple, right?
Yeah.
You
It's an
know.
engineer speaking
Uh,
right there.
well, I don't want to throw you under. You're not the kind of engineer we throw under the bus on this podcast. So normally we're the designing engineer who's like,
Oh,
yes, you remove the subframe to change the oil. That's the engineer we need to
exactly.
talk.
Yeah. There you go.
Uh, so I just one of the big things for me is the post race weekend, for lack of a better term, like the hot wash. So this is actually led by my wife. So we usually pile into the truck and she's like, so what do you got to do
Mm.
before next race? So what does that look like for you guys on the pro level? Is there like a big meeting? You got a teleconference or whatever? Or do you do it before you leave the track? What's it look like? What's it sort of consist of? I operate on feelings.
Yeah,
I do data all day long for a job. And for some reason, I just operate on feelings at the racetrack. So,
it's fair. It's
uh,
it's sometimes more enjoyable that way.
yeah.
Yeah. So post session, or I guess post race, immediately I sit down with my drivers and I say, okay, what were you feeling in each of your stints? And I get those notes and we talked about that. But when we get back to the shop, we have a team debrief of the whole weekend. So I mean, we even get into sometimes the type of bread we bought. Like, are we happy with it? So we have a whole team debrief about it. We look at pit stop video for each car. It's something we capture, and that's a huge component in any racing, but especially ours, is how quickly can we get in and out of the pits? The more time you spend in the pits, the more time you're losing on track. So if we can optimize our pit stops, we're doing really well. And then I usually sit down. We have two fly-in race engineers, and then me and one other engineer is a considered full-time. And it's actually funny, he was my professor in school and now our technical director. So it's an interesting change in relationship there. But we get together and talk about, okay, what mistakes or what went well for me personally. It's kind of a debrief of like, hey, like I thought this setup change was going to do this, instead it did this, and why. We go through those questions. And then looking forward to prep, the biggest thing the mechanics look for is, was there damage during the race? Okay, we address that first. And then they go through and they tear the car apart. They take everything apart, clean it, inspect it, and then it all goes back together. And then I usually give them a starting setup. So I know that was a very simple and broad way of saying they tear everything apart, but yeah.
Well, I think that's interesting. And so you guys are doing what, 2-hour races
Yep.
in your
Yeah.
stints?
Yeah, we have 8 2-hour races and 2 4-hour races.
Okay. So it's you guys are your races are roughly 4 of ours. So
Okay.
roughly one weekend full, because we sprint. So we're sprinting 30 to 40 minutes at a time. Okay.
Yep.
Not super sprints like GLTC, but so 30 to 40 minutes at a time. We ignore our cars unless they're definitely broken, right? But you guys are tearing them down afterwards. We don't have the manpower or time.
Oh, for
Okay.
sure.
I
Yeah.
understand that for people. But I feel like in your debrief as an amateur to yourself, you need to be true to yourself. And I think it'll save headaches in the long run. No matter what I did, I couldn't get it to do XYZ and then go to that corner or half of the car and really inspect it, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
because you're probably going to find a bushing that's not letting your suspension work like it's supposed to, or a blown damper or something. Something made it not do what you intended it to do, even though you were making changes, right? We usually ignore that stuff. And yeah, so I think that's kind of important. I wish I could tear my car apart every single race. I really do. I was the crazy one that when I built this car, it's my second one, unfortunately, I was like, oh, I'm going to go buy the Master Thread Chaser kit and thread chase the entire car before I rebuilt it, right? Before I put it back together. Well, that leads me to like, oh, I just disassembled the rear suspension. Let me chase it again. Let me clean it out. Let me do all that, And you guys get to play those details all the time, but your bushings, that seems a big one to me because I'm on 200,000 mile bushings right now.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it is a lot different when it's
good.
your own time and effort, right? So
yeah. I mean, we already know I'm so dedicated, right? I've put a couple hours in over 3 months. So.
Yeah. Look, it's better than some people, so better than me, that's for sure.
Well, I should have put a couple hours into putting a heating system in the garage, and then I probably would have been out there more, but we'll worry about obligating our time. So another thing I find interesting is that you guys debrief all the way down to your food.
Yeah.
Because I like food. I mean, I'm kind of a puffy, fluffy guy, but it's important, right? What worked and what didn't work that weekend includes a gambit of things.
100%. Yeah. And I liked your point of you have to be true to yourself. I mean, you have to be honest with yourself. Like there's Daytona, that event, even though our car finished P4, our teammates first and third and then eighth, which is great for us. But I made a lot of mistakes that weekend. And it's like, I sat there and I was like, wow, this was a rough weekend for me. And so that helps, right? Because now I'm like, okay, these are the mistakes I've made. And whether they're personal or to the setup or in conversation, right? Then it becomes, okay, yeah, I've made those mistakes. I can recognize them if they're about to happen again or if they do happen again. And then you don't make the same mistake.
Right. And if you identify the mistake and you can eliminate it in preparatory work,
yes,
just do that now, right?
Yep.
Don't let that chance happen again, right? Eliminate it through prep work. And I think that's kind of a big deal. My wife's always like, okay, what's broken? That's number one on her list. What's broken? What do you need to order tomorrow? Because it needs to get here. You need to find the time to put it on before the next race, right? And then we get into, okay, what went well and why did it go well? And then what didn't go well, why didn't it go well? And then other things, right? Like we camp, just my setup, we have a tent, so, okay, we blew the air mattress. All right, we better get one of those, right? We ran out of backup Coleman propane, for our camp stove, all the little stuff, or like me, we have a checklist. I have a tools checklist. She makes me follow it. If she doesn't make me follow it, I forget tools because, while I have 3 of everything, I don't have it ready to go for whatever reason.
I mean, checklists are great. I live and die by a checklist. So I come down to, I have a packing list and I've been racing now for 6 years and it's the same list and I check it off every time. And I mean, that's what goes into the prep and that's what makes the rest of it. I like to think of it as it leaves my brain more open for other problems to solve. If I've got it down on a checklist, then I've got more brain capacity.
Yeah, I have a really bad habit where I check the box on the checklist, as in I know I have it, not it's packed.
Yeah.
And so multiple times in my racing career, I've unpacked my truck and my car because I have an open trailer. So the trunk of my Civic is full of stuff usually. So I
Right. Yeah.
unpack all of it and go, did I bring my 36 mil axle nut? You know, like,
Yeah.
do I have spares? Do I have this? Whatever I forgot. Yeah. So you have to, if you have a checklist, still have to do it right. It doesn't
Oh
help
yeah,
to just
for
have a
sure.
checklist.
I've definitely forgot stuff. I mean, last year we went WRL racing with a TCA car, and everything about the TCA car screams sprint racing. And Bryan was like, "Hey, let's do 2 WRL races with, some of our more rookie drivers. Let's get them more seat time in tracks that we go to." And I was like, "Oh, that's a great idea. I'll organize it." So I did housing for crew, right? It was a small crew, so Airbnb was good enough for us. And I had this whole list of what I thought was everything, and then I get to the track and I'm like, yeah, we've got sprint racing pads in the car. We don't have 7 hour, 8 hour racing brake pads on this car. So sorry to break it to my mechanics, but we're going to be doing brake changes every hour. So, uh, yeah, yeah, no, it was definitely not not ideal. And I'm very lucky. My boyfriend loves being a mechanic, and so I recruited him. And my dad loves being at the track too. And I always love my dad's insight. And so he's like, yeah, no matter what, we're going racing. He's like, I don't care what it takes. We're gonna get these pads on the car. We're gonna try to win, but when you have to do a brake pad change every hour, it'll cost you.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I hope they packed welding gloves while they were at it. But
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
pull pads and throw new ones in. But yeah,
Yeah.
hot swapping pads is rough life.
Oh,
It's a
I
rough
felt
life.
so bad. I watched it happen from behind the wall, and I'm like, wow, this is my fault. This is on me.
Right. Note to self: if we're going to
Yeah.
do this again, buy endurance pads.
Yes.
Check. Add to checklist. Endurance checklist.
Exactly.
Right.
Yes. A checklist for my checklist. Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. I want to regress a little bit. When you are working with your drivers, are you giving them any like warm up time? Because you talked about at Daytona that they need to knock rust off or cobwebs or whatever. So, what are your expectations for the drivers when you hand them the keys and tell them to go? Or do you expect times immediately?
I think it depends on the driver. Short answer, I mean, selfishly, yes, I want to say that every driver should go out there and put in a representative lap time, but
Okay.
I like the likelihood of that on cold tires, the first practice session of a race weekend. I don't want to say it's low because we've had it happen, but it's my expectation is let's go put in a representative lap once we have 5 laps on the car, because I know tire pressures are up. I know engine's warm. I know if I put blanking on the brakes, or we've needed a bed brakes, something like that. And so I think with our more rookie drivers, it's like, okay, we need to set a lap time in 5 laps. That's kind of our expectation. And if they can't get there, okay, why? Or is it just because you need 6 laps or 7 laps? And so I usually account for that. But I've got 2 different levels of drivers in my car this year. I have Mark Wilkins, who's well known all over TCR and other racing, and then I have Maddie Oust, who's just breaking into her racing career. I mean, she's gone from GR Cup to TCR, which is a pretty big jump, and she's killed it so far. I mean, she keeps showing these improvements, but right, it's a rookie driver, so I have to take in kind of sometimes a different mentality. Then with Mark, I can be on the radio and say, okay, I need this lap time, and he'll usually go set it.
Okay. All right. That's interesting. Yeah. I'll get to there. I have a segment at the end that we're going to talk about. I want from a potential driver and then the from the race engineer standpoint. I want to hear what you have to say. I think it's going to be pretty important. But okay. That's at the end. I'm going through I jumped around so much that I'm not sure what I did with myself on my thing. I don't want to miss a question. Yeah. Okay. So we talked about tires and swapping. Talked about maybe giving them a warm up. Okay. So your post-race inspection sort of debrief, this is where the circle comes, because that sort of rolls into your pre-race preparation, right? What is the time frame that you guys have usually between your races, and how do you marry those two together?
Yeah, so it definitely depends on the race. Obviously, some schedules are further apart. Like right now, our next race isn't until I think March 18th. And so we've got more than a month. But we have a really good crew chief in our shop, and he delegates each car chief. So we have a car chief and crew chief, and the crew chief is exactly what it sounds like. He basically manages all of the crew. Car chief is car specific. But I write down we call it an issues list. So if I had brake issues during the race, or maybe I felt like my turbo had problems, or I have the data to support these issues, that gets on a list, and then I send it to the crew chief, he'll take it to the car chief and say, okay, these are the things we need to inspect on the car. And then usually, like right now, we're getting into setups for Sebring, and it's been probably 2 weeks, I'd say. So we try to get the cars set up and ready in case anything else comes up in the shop. But we also have a lot of shop work to do. We're running the TCR cars out of the shop and an LMP2 car. And so anything we can do to help that LMP2 team that we've partnered with, we're going to jump on their side as well.
Okay. So I think that's sort of like the hot wash for me with the wife, where we're like figuring out what's really broken and what went really wrong and how do we fix that. Usually I couldn't tell her. I'm driving. I'm not Googling all my problems while I drive loaded truck and trailer, right? But at the same time, it's on my list. It's being written down so that it can be researched, potential solutions come up, and I have to do the investigating, right?
Yep.
I think you guys that's interesting. I forget you guys are turbocharged. God bless you guys. I would just keep turbos all over the place. I'd be like, okay, feels a little weak. Time for a freshie,
Right, yeah.
I don't know how those things survive, but okay. One last thing. I will accept a cop out of checklists, but what is one IMSA level habit that you've picked up as an engineer that you will apply to your amateur racing career?
Oh, this is a great question. I think one of the biggest things that even just from Bryan Herta Autosport that I've picked up is being extremely thorough. I say that and then I think about all the free time I have, and I'm like, how could anyone be this thorough? Our guys are so good at checking all this stuff, and obviously we've got the time and the money in place to do so. But I think that's something I'd like to carry forward is, okay, I'm gonna be thorough about this problem. I'm gonna take it to the end. And I've even noticed, like, if I have to rewire something, if I'm not doing it thoroughly the first time, it comes back to bite me, whether it's a week later, 6 months later, or something like that. Just take the long route, do it the right way. That's kind of how I see it.
Yeah, and that can be hard, right? So, okay, I'll confess a sin here. So, one of many issues with my car that kept me off the track last year, one was the battery ground from the battery in the trunk to the chassis. Now it's bound to the car in like 3 places, and where it bolts to the factory ground where the taillights went. Okay. Where the taillights were grounded.
Yep.
But since I store stuff in the trunk and it bounces down the road, it's bounced down the road now for 5 years. Apparently the wire, since it's bound so tight to the thing, and the end piece that bolts onto the rear bulkhead, it looked together, but in actuality, it was just loose inside there. Even though I used the big crimpers
Yep.
and everything. And I haven't fixed that yet.
Oh, a ground wire is kind of important, especially the ground wire.
I mean, it's the for the battery. So yeah, I
Right.
guess so. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, we fixed it at the track and it worked. And
Yeah.
I just
I
don't.
mean, there's also a difference between track fixes and at home fixes, right? I've noticed that a lot too. It's at the track, especially on the SCCA kind of grid life amateur level. I want to be back out on track, so what gets me there, right? It's kind of a lack of better terms, a band-aid fix, and then get it right when you get home if you have the time. That's the biggest struggle is this the time, especially when all of us have full-time jobs.
Yeah. I've had 3 months. I don't really have an excuse, but
I'm trying to advocate here for you.
I get
Really
it.
trying to be
I
on your
appreciate
side.
it. I really do. I appreciate it. I swear. Sometimes I need to browbeat myself, so I remember that I need to go do that. It should take me 15 minutes to make a new one, right? Like not
Yep.
even 15 to make one and put it in, and I just haven't. I'm just a little dejected that I did it the best way I knew how, with the big crimping, like bolt cutter style. I crimped it
Yep.
in like 3 places and it still came loose eventually. So anyway, all right, let's get on to the segment for the end of the podcast. So I want this from the engineering side and then as the driver side, because you said you were driving a TCA car, so I'm pretty sure it's on there. Okay. ABS on your race cars or no ABS on your race cars?
Ooh, ABS on the race
Okay.
car. I think for both cases, I think. Well, I don't know. Actually, now that I think about it, I think I'd say ABS for endurance racing, no ABS for sprint racing. I think that's what I would think about it.
Okay. Now you've studied the data of your drivers, and I'm sure your Elantra has ABS.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And then you went to go get your provisional, right, with the SCCA in a TCA car. Are you on the ABS kind of person, or like easier way into maybe hitting the ABS?
My mentality is I got to know how hard this car stops. So I'm in it, I'm testing it, and then it hopefully, you don't always have to be in it, right? It's just all dependent. But if I know where it's at in that line, then that makes things a lot easier for me.
Okay, so but like most tracks, turn 1 is a big brake zone. Most of them, not all of them.
Yep. Yeah.
Going into turn 1, are you just going to stand on the ABS, or are you going to ease your way towards it?
Ooh. Just thinking, because my knowledge is limited, it's really front wheel drive focused. I think if it's a big brake zone, you should be in it pretty early and bleed off the brakes so you're out of it. I think it's getting that braking done as soon as possible, right? If you're in it, you can manage it early, but if you stay in it, it messes your whole braking zone up.
Yeah, you can, especially if you're trailing in. If you're releasing on your way to apex, depending on the car, especially if it takes steering angle and stuff into how it's operating, not necessarily traction control, but how it's modulating, I'm sure it's a mess.
Yes, yeah, 100%. Yeah, if you're not in and out of it pretty quickly, it definitely affects that mid brake zone, mid off. Yeah.
Okay. All right. I appreciate that answer. We've had a lot of no ABS answers this year so far, so we're
Oh,
coming back.
interesting.
Yeah, it's something about the purity of braking. I don't care about the purity of braking. I care about outbraking the person over there or
Yeah.
over there or wherever. I'm worried about the purity of this.
Right,
So,
yeah. If I can get it done, I'll get it done. Yeah.
right. But whatever the best way is, let
Yeah.
me add that. So, all right. Well, Megan, it's been a pleasure. Do you want to share your socials or where people can follow you or the team?
Oh, sure, yeah. I'm pretty sure if you just look up Bryan Herta Autosport on Instagram, it's one of the first ones. And then my Instagram's m.ryder06. It's RYDER. But yeah, that's really all the socials I can offer you.
Well, I really appreciate you coming on. It's been a pleasure. I enjoy learning. So this has been a good experience for me.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on and letting me share some insight. And I've learned too from the amateur side. I'm going to take some of this forward.
Oh, Lord, don't do that.
There you go. I thought you'd want to hear that.
Until next time, keep working on yourself, keep working on the car, and let's get faster.